this section that you're in, what really matters is that you ask yourself the question, why is he proposing these radical things like having marriages that are of short duration and that are by lottery or supposed lottery, like keeping children in a common kind of space where nobody knows who their child is? Why is he saying such radical things about the life of the guardian? And there are other claims that are radical too. Like, at the time, the idea that women could be guardians would be very hard for Greeks to take seriously because they're so misogynistic. On the whole, women were seen as being incapable of anything higher in the soul, so any philosophical or even more self-directed or choice-worthy behavior. Another thing that's radical that isn't just, sort of this community's approach that we talked about, like about property and marriage and things like that, is the idea that the philosopher rules. That would be crazy because philosophers deal with the abstract. They're not seen as being particularly acquainted with the real world. It's almost like they study the other world. Or, hey, why is he saying these things if he doesn't mean for them to be followed? And the answer that you are supposed to be working through or working with is something about these claims is supposed to push you to realize truths about human nature. Okay? This is a version of Socratic irony where he's not saying something meant to be literally true, but for the sake of another meaning that you're being invited into, contemplating and learning from. I will give you one example. Let's walk through kind of your reaction to the idea of having children kept in a common lot or common space. Odds are, when you hear this, Socrates listeners laugh, right? You have the 3 waves of laughter. But when you hear it, you probably think, yeah, that would never work. And now you need to say to yourself, well, why? Why wouldn't it work? Well, it wouldn't work because people, generally speaking, except in cases of extreme, like a really messed up person, people love their kids. Even if they don't make the best decisions about raising them and they make mistakes, they love them. They're not going to give them away most of the time. The common average instinct is to not give your child to the state, is to not, let the state hide the identity of your child for you. The common instinct is to love your child and want your child to be with you. You see what happens to people who lose their children. They fall apart. Even if they continue to live after the loss of their children, they're never the same. They have something change about their heart and lives. It's like there's always a missing piece. Plato knows that. Plato knows how unnatural it would be for the guardians to accept this. And what he's trying to point out is that there are some pre-political passions, loves, attachments that are prior to any commitment we would have to the political community. Most of us would not think of sacrificing our children for the sake of the political community. We want the political community to protect our children. In part, that's why we want a political community. A lot of times, when you're a parent, someday you'll get that. You're like thinking about politics. You're going to say, what is this policy? What does this policy have to say about the future or the present of my children, right? Our loves and our attachments, we want politics to protect those things. We don't want to destroy those things for the sake of politics. It is tyrannical to want to transform human nature to be something that is so far from what it is. I think that is part of Plato's point here, actually. This is where you're going to start to see him shift into a push for political moderation. To have perfection through political forms will deform human nature, will tyrannize human nature so much that it isn't perfection that politics should seek, but moderation. And that is what you're going to be thinking about as we go forward.